So there's one tiny habit I do every single day that isn't fun, but I know it keeps my weight stable. So listen on to find out what this habit is and how to get the benefits for yourself, even though it isn't super fun. Hi, so welcome to Joyful Eating, episode number 195. And this week we're talking about a tiny habit that isn't fun, but it does keep your weight stable. But before we get to that, the best bite I had was leftovers from my birthday lunch, actually, and so we had this Brussels sprouts dish out at a restaurant with, so it was roast Brussels sprouts with new, I'm not sure how you pronounce it actually, like it's Nduja. So it's like this, it's like chorizo or salami, but it's like in this paste form. And so it's got that spice, it's got that meatiness to it. And then it had like all these toasted breadcrumbs on top. And just having that, it was good in the restaurant, but it was pretty intense in the restaurant. So what I've found is that actually, like we took the leftovers home and I've really been enjoying like just having a couple of these Brussels sprouts in amongst my other food. Like it just really just elevates everything. Like, and that meatiness and intensity is really good when you're only having a couple of them. Okay, so that was really that was my best bite. Okay, so our plan for today is first I'm going to share the tiny habit that keeps weight stable, and then I'll share like what that tiny habit is. Then we're going to share with you like the story behind how how I like decided to implement this habit, even though it isn't that much fun. And then I'm going to like talk about why I recommend this habit and why I recommend doing it every day. And then also like how to go about doing it. And yes, and that's our plan. Okay, so in terms of what is this tiny habit that you're talking about, Jules? So basically, the habit is weighing yourself every day. And of course, like sometimes the result isn't pretty. So it's definitely not something that is super fun. And I guess the story, in terms of the story behind this, like like for a long time, I didn't weigh myself. Like most of my adult life, I didn't weigh myself because my thought was, I don't want to obsess about my weight. But the thing is that when I didn't have that data and I didn't have that knowledge, that visibility of the data, I was actually constantly obsessing. I was always like, am I getting like when I put my clothes on and like something's fitting and like, am I just bloated or, am I getting pudgy? And like there was this constant narrative in my head. And then also like I just, if I ran into someone I hadn't seen for a while and they're like, oh, Jules, you're still running. Like in my head, I would be like this crazy person having all this brain drama going, they think I'm getting really fat. I've stopped running. Like, that's why they're asking. They're just like, making conversation. But I had all this craziness going wrong. And then I read Daria Rose's great book called Foodist. And in that, she talks about just this idea that actually, if you want to stop obsessing about your weight, actually having the data helps you do that. That, and she recommended like getting on the scale every day and doing it from a neutral place, doing it from a curious place rather than it being this like shame and blame game. And so I decided to just do an experiment with that and just thought, maybe there's something here for me. And yeah, I did. And so when I started doing that, I found that, yeah, of course, there were days where I wasn't happy with the number, but also overall, it just quietened down all my mind drama. Because if I had a bloated day, like I'd be like, no, I know my weight. Like I haven't gained a lot of weight. Like I know where my weight's at. So it just gave me that certainty. And I actually found that it actually reduced all that obsession because I had that visibility and I knew where I was at exactly. And also the other thing that the kind of unexpected thing was I learned to over time, and this was an intentional thing, to separate my self-worth from the number on the scale. So rather than seeing it as this like big judgment of me as a person and my value as a person, actually keep just seeing it as data. It's just like one data point. It's like how tall I am. It doesn't. If I'm a few centimeters taller, it doesn't make me a better person. And if I weigh a few kilos more, it doesn't make me a better person. Same as if I shrunk by, if I shrink, if my height was less, like, I wouldn't be less valuable as a person. So having the, having this habit had that unexpected benefit of separating that self-worth as well. So it actually created a lot more peace in my life around food and weight, which is kind of counterintuitive, but then it also makes sense when you think about it. So why do I recommend weighing yourself every day? Well, to get all those benefits that I just said, but the research is really clear that people who do weigh themselves regularly are less likely to be overweight. And I actually saw a study recently where they got two groups of people, and over the holidays, and one group, they got to weigh themselves every day, and then the other group, they just got like a they didn't get any instructions at all. So this is over the Christmas period, and the group that were weighing themselves on average stayed the same weight, and the group that didn't weigh themselves, I can't remember how much they gained, but they all gained weight, right? So there is like there's research around this, and just like yeah, it's very clear. And there's a in the US, they have the National Weight Loss Registry for people who've lost over 30 pounds and kept it off for 1 year. And I think the average is that people have lost 66 pounds and kept it off for 5 years. And most of those people weigh themselves on a regular basis. So there is a lot of evidence that it is a valuable tool. And I think the reason why it works is because we just have that little, like having that little bit of a extra awareness. Like there's this thing in business that, what gets measured gets improved. And so when we're measuring something as humans, when we have data around it, we can't help ourselves. Like we want to make it better. Like we want to make that number better. And so we'll subtly adjust, like, oh yeah, okay. Like if you in the back of your mind, you're like, oh yeah, okay, scale's creeping up. No, do I really need that dessert tonight? Maybe not. Or maybe I can like just have one cookie instead of having two or three. And it's just these little micro decisions that it guides, and that helps us keep our weight really stable. And I think the other reason why it's really valuable to weigh yourself is that it helps you observe patterns and see, oh yeah, okay, well when I do like this is what happens when I do, maybe if I have a really salty meal, this is what happens. Or when I'm a bit constipated, this is what happens. Like, and so it just brings a lot more understanding into the whole equation, which can be helpful for guiding your choices. And yeah, and also like it's yeah, I guess the unexpected reason why it's helpful is that it actually is an opportunity to create that better relationship with yourself, because you're not so obsessed and tied up with weight as being this important thing. Like it actually helps you appreciate yourself as a person if you do it right. So that's why I'm such a big fan of it, fan of weighing yourself every day. And why daily is because just from a statistics point of view, sorry, we're not going to go into a statistics lesson. I'm not great at statistics, but just just from a data perspective, like the more data you have, the more visibility like the more likely that you're going to have like an accurate picture, the data is going to be an accurate representation of where you're at. Whereas if you're only weighing yourself once a week or only weighing yourself once a month, we do get these daily fluctuations depending on a whole host of factors. And so if you're only weighing yourself infrequently, those data points can be a bit misleading. Whereas if you've got that constant everyday data, you're more likely to have a true representation. And yeah, and also the reason for daily is that it doesn't become this big thing of like, oh, I've got to weigh in today, it's Friday or whatever weigh-in day is for you. Like, and it doesn't like, it's just a little part of your day that doesn't become this whole thing where you're like, oh, I've got to like not drink any water today to like or go into the sauna and be like a jockey. Like it just becomes like hard, like just a normal part of your day. And yeah, and I think daily is more helpful from the motivation and accountability piece as well. Like when you see that number, particularly if you see it staying where you want it to, or you're heading in the direction that you want it to, like it's motivating to keep going and keep being like you're making the choices that you're making. So yeah, so that's why daily. And so how do we go about doing this? Like weighing ourselves every day. So like you don't want to be and actually definitely you don't want to, more data isn't good, so you don't want to be weighing yourself multiple times a day. And so you want to do it at the same time every day, so you're keeping it as constant as possible, so approximately the same time, and doing it first thing in the morning, so before you've had anything to eat or drink. So I do mine, get up, go to the loo, and then weigh myself. And I think it's also helpful to record the number. And there's the app that I use is called Happy Scales. And so, but having some way that you're recording the number so that in some form that generates like a graph, because sometimes when you're just looking at numbers, like it can be hard to see the trends. Whereas if you've got it, like, and there's heaps of options out there, when you can see a graph, then you can say, oh, right, okay, yeah, it is slightly heading down, or maybe it's slightly heading up, or whatever it's going, but it just makes the data more meaningful. And the other thing, of course, and this is where the not fun part is just to be prepared for the thoughts and feelings that come up when you do weigh yourself. And rather than just letting it, your brain, go crazy and be like, freak out about whatever the number is, just be prepared just to remind yourself that, yeah, this is just data. It's not a reflection of me as a person. I'm just doing this to learn, and just rather than being like this torturous habit where you're beating yourself up and giving yourself a hard time and going into the shame spiral of, and you know set going using it as evidence, I'm never going to be able to lose this weight. Actually, instead approaching it from a curious place of like, oh, okay, yeah, there's just something here for me to learn. And actually, and when you do that, like when you remind yourself, yeah, it's just data, it's nothing, it's not a reflection of my self-worth, those thoughts that we have a huge impact on how we feel about the number. And so you're in control there, like you are able to do that. But yeah, that's a really key part of making it this habit that, yeah, it's not fun to weigh yourself, but it's also doesn't need to be this like torturous experience. And in some ways, actually, it can be kind of, when you're bringing that curious mindset, you can have a little game with yourself. And sometimes I do that. Like if I've had a really indulgent day the day before, I'll be like thinking about weighing myself, and I'm like, I wonder how big, what's going to be today, like how much can it be, how much will it go up, it's up today. I'm like, actually bring a little bit of playfulness. So actually, maybe it can be fun. Maybe I'm selling this whole habit as habit short. No, um, yeah, like it's up to you. You can bring some lightness and levity into it and not make it this whole heavy thing. Um, and yeah, like if you've got resistance to this idea, and you're like, if you what I do, I really don't want to be obsessing, like really, like as Daria Rose says in her book, she says, fearing and avoiding the scale doesn't make you any less of a slave to it. If you want to stop obsessing, step on the scale every day without feeling shame or pride, and actually just doing it from this neutral place. So um, yes, so that's how we go about doing it. And then just some intentional thoughts that can help you with that, making it not a torturous experience, making it a more neutral experience, is just reminding yourself, like, it's just data, it's just information, it's here to help me, and this is how I can learn what works for me. And I'm doing this because what gets measured gets improved. Like these thoughts can be really helpful. Uh, and also like bring that curiosity of like, oh, I wonder what can I learn from this, and just bringing that curiosity, and then also reminding yourself, like, my weight isn't a reflection of my self-worth or my lovability or anything about me. It's just this is just data, it's just a number, and it doesn't have to mean anything good about me. It also doesn't have to mean anything bad about me. So yeah, like key takeaway for today is just, I encourage you, like if you aren't someone who weighs yourself, like just like try an experiment. Like you don't have to decide now whether you're going to do it for the rest of your life or not. But yeah, give yourself, like, try it as an experiment to see what happens if you do weigh yourself every day for a week from this curious place, and see, see what comes up for you. And maybe it is something that you will, a tool that can be helpful, but you won't know until you try. Okay. Have a fantastic week experimenting and playing around, and I will see you next week. Okay. Bye.